Welcome to the second video in our series of 3 videos on situation ethics. So in this one we're going to look at the 6 propositions of situation ethics, and the purpose of them is to show how love is supposed to function in ethical decision making. Most importantly, the 6 propositions help us understand what Fletcher really means when he says love. And let me get my book. Right, I've got my book. So if you look at the propositions, they're kind of like, they're almost sentences long. And I feel that can be pretty tricky to remember. So I'm going to focus on the short versions. What I mean by the short versions, I'm going to show you. So in his book, Situation Ethics, he has a chapter dedicated to every one of these 6 propositions. And so if I show you this, have a look at this. So here we have, this is the 4th proposition. Love wills the neighbour's good, whether we like him or not. Can you still hear me? I hope so. Now the short version, look, it's just the chapter title, which is Love is Not Liking, and that's far more simpler. And obviously this video is directed at people doing A-levels, and but anyone can watch it, of course. And I feel like if you're trying to remember the long propositions, that's quite difficult. But maybe if you just focus on the short versions, I'm going to tell you, it'd be easier to remember if you need to recall it in an exam, in an essay, whatever. So, short versions. The second one, I'm not going to do the short version, but, well, whatever. Let's start with number 1 anyway. So, love only is always good. So what this proposition is about, fundamentally, it's about moral value. For Fletcher, the only thing with intrinsic value is love. So by saying that love is intrinsically good, what we're saying is that love is the only thing that is good in itself or is good for its own sake. And love is not made good by anything else. It is just good, full stop. And there's no way that love could be bad, right? Nothing can make love bad. Love is always good. And that's what we mean by intrinsic value. So this first proposition is just a point about intrinsic value. Number 2, love is the only norm. Now, the full version is the ruling norm of Christian decision is love. So, basically what this means is that central to situationist decision-making is love and how best to serve love. And by love, Fletcher means agape, which he defines as goodwill at work in partnership with reason. Important thing about agape is an attitude rather than a feeling or a desire. It seeks the neighbour's best interests. It does not expect anything in return. It does not give greater consideration to one over another. It treats everybody the same. It's not romantic love. It's not friendship love. It's a Christian love, and it reflects the love that God has for us. Fletcher attacks legalists at this point by saying that they love the law, but what we should do is follow Jesus' teaching and accept the law of love. Number 3, love and justice are the same. I don't think that this one matters too much for really understanding the theory, but let's go over it quickly. Fletcher identifies a perceived tension between justice and love among other ethical thinkers, where they seem to say that justice and love can sometimes pull in opposite directions. Fletcher argues that this isn't a thing, right? They're effectively the same thing. The most loving thing must be the most just, and to be just is to be loving, and therefore there's no conflict. And even if you're in government or whatever and you're trying to do, making a just society, you just do what is the most loving thing for people, and it will work out fine. 4, love is not liking. So ultimately this reflects Jesus' teachings, that it's also in the Old Testament that says, love thy neighbour as thyself. The point is, to repeat, agape is an attitude. It should be extended to everybody, whether we like them, whether we don't, whether they're friends, whether they're enemies, whether they deserve it, whether they don't deserve it. So agape involves loving the unlovable. 5, love justifies the means. So this is interesting because here we see situation ethics flirt a bit with consequences. Now, I think I'm going to sneeze. I just sneezed. Consequentialism says that the rightness or wrongness of an action is determined by the consequences of the action. What Fletcher has to say about this is that consequences have at least some bearing on the rightness of an action. I say bearing because he thinks there are 4 factors that we must weigh when we analyse moral decisions in order to figure out what the most loving thing is. These are the desired end, the means of achieving that end, the consequences, and the motive as well. So I kind of say that he's not a strict consequentialist because he's not like a utilitarian here thinking that only the consequences matter, because he thinks that, for instance, motives matter as well. But the consequences can play a really big role, and it can be sometimes the consequences that make the action the most loving thing. 6, we're at the end already. So love decides there and then. What this means is that more decisions, they should not be made prior to considering the actual situation. You shouldn't enter ethical situations with like a moral rule book that you can just sort of mental rule book and pull up in your mind and just apply the rules to the situation. He doesn't think you should ever do that because every single situation is different. It always has different factors. So you should always go in and what he actually says is you should make the decision situationally, not prescriptively. So you kind of go in and decide there and then what the most loving thing to do is. For example, Fletcher defends a woman's decision to abort a defective fetus, because of her taking of thalidomide. I nearly said it wrong. And he defends her actions and calls her actions brave and responsible and right, because she was trying to do the most loving thing given the particulars of the situation. So I'm just going to summarize the 6 propositions now in their short form. So we have love only is always good. Love is the only norm. Love and justice are the same. Love is not liking. Love justifies the means. And love decides there and then.